Hi guys, welcome to EduRex's masterclass on acing campus placements. Without any further ado, we'll try and introduce ourselves to be. So the agenda for today is something that we are all very concerned about, that is COVID's effect on placements. After that, we'll try and segue into what is required for placements and details regarding placements. We'll also have an interactive activity with you guys in which you guys have to be involved with a pen and paper and post all of the information. We also have a question and answer session. So be ready with your questions. You can ask them on chat towards the end. So first of all, starting with the raging topic of today, which is how COVID-19 is going to be affecting your career. We have seen and read reports, all of us have read reports that jobs are in a huge crisis because there is an economic depression which has been enhanced by the COVID virus. Colleges starting from the highest tier like Harvard to the lowest tier are being affected by this crisis, and jobs have disappeared from across sectors. To have a greater idea, because of the interconnectedness of the world, jobs have disappeared from travel, airlines, adventure ticketing, to entertainment, to core industries and core mechanical industries like automobile, energy, etc., to electronics and almost every other engineering division. So what does this mean for guys like you? This means that a lot of the companies which are going to come to recruit from campus are not going to hire as much, and the recruitment numbers may be falling. However, all is not lost because the well prepared have always aced placements irrespective of the job market. This we have seen in our own batch as well as in batches of 2009 and 2008 during the Great Recession as well. And there are industries which are going to be recruiting in more numbers as well.
So to be better prepared for campus placements, it's essential to understand what are the skills that recruiters desire in their future employees. On the left-hand side, you can see that one of the major problems with Indian graduates is that they lack skills which are in demand in the corporate world. And the major reason for this problem is the huge gap which exists between the knowledge that campus imparts and the skills that are actually required in the workplace. So campuses typically impart research-oriented knowledge, which is certainly good for academia, but it's not of much use for getting selected by recruiters. Now, students also have their own opinions regarding the skills that companies look for while selecting candidates. These opinions include credentials, hard skills, and other individual considerations. Credentials mean your college, your branch, your CGPA. Hard skills mean your technical expertise or subject matter knowledge. But what a lot of students do not realize is that companies place a huge weightage on soft skills and their pre-decided hiring parameters. Soft skills might mean your communication, your body language, how you behave during the interview, and your personality, etc. The pre-decided hiring parameters include testing your aptitude and logical reasoning using guesstimates, aptitude exams, or case studies. So just to give you guys a flavor of what a portion of your real life interview might look like, let's try to have a guesstimate. So before going into the problem, I'll give you a brief overview of what guesstimates are. They are being increasingly used by all type of companies during the interview. So a guesstimate is typically a one sentence problem statement that the interviewer gives to you without giving much context behind it. Now it's your job to extract information from the interviewer. Your first step would be to clarify the problem statement in sufficient detail. Once you have done that, you have to form a mental structure of how you're going to approach the problem. Your third step should be to segment the problem into smaller components so that it's easier for you to explain it to the interviewer, because you have to get the buy-in of the interviewer at each stage. Then you make certain assumptions of your own and do your calculations while getting the interviewer in agreement with you. And finally, you arrive at an answer. All the while you are solving the guesstimate, the interviewer is directly noticing how you are reacting, how you are explaining your thought process. So I will explain the solution and the structure behind a guesstimate later on. But first, you guys should try to solve one. So I hope you people are ready with your pen and paper. This is the problem statement. Estimate the number of school-going children in Delhi. So you people will have 4 minutes to try to arrive at an answer. Even if you do not find an answer, at least think of a mental structure or write down some numbers regarding how you will approach it during a real life interview.
And if you think you guys have the answer, you can actually message on the public forum, or you can message it to EduTech Learning Solution, the host, so that we can see if any one of you has cracked the puzzle.
So guys, let's have a look at how one can approach the solution to this problem in an interview setup. Now, many of you have asked, what do you mean by school-going children? And for what standards do we have to calculate the number? So these are really great questions to ask. I have done this guesstimate with hundreds of students, and frankly, most of the people do not ask these type of questions. Your first step while solving a guesstimate should be to clarify the objective in as much detail as you can. And only after that, you have to proceed to form your mental structure. So in this case, school-going children can mean students up to standard 10th. And it can also include, in some places, it can include students of class 11th and 12th. So once you have clarified from the interviewer what school-going children really mean, you have to start from a fairly known data point. So in this case, it can be the entire population of Delhi, which is commonly known to be around 2 crores. Now the actual figure doesn't matter. The population might be 1.7 crores, it might be 2.13 crores, but as long as you and your interviewer agree on a common number, you can assume it to be, in this case, for example, 2 crores. So once you have taken a large enough number, which in this case is population of Delhi, you can form a mental structure of how you are going to proceed. So in this case, I'd instantly know that I want to do an age-based segmentation. This is common knowledge that India is a fairly young country. 50% of Indians are below the age of 25. Applying the same logic to Delhi, it would mean that there are 1 crore people in Delhi who are below the age of 25. Next, if we assume an equal population distribution, meaning there are 1 crore people, there are 25 years, it means that for each year, there are 4 lakh people. At each year, there are 4 lakh people. My next step would be to segment schools based on their types. So usually there are 3 types of schools: primary schools up to standard 5th, high schools from 6th to 10th standard, and higher secondary schools which are for 11th and 12th standard. For primary schools, the age group is usually from 4 to 10. There are 7 years between 4 to 10. For every year, there are 4 lakh people. It means in primary schools, there should be 28 lakh children. Similarly, in high schools, 24 lakhs, and in higher secondary, 8 lakhs. This gives us a figure of 60 lakh children who are eligible by age. But that's not all. We all have seen that some students drop out after studying for, let's say, a standard 10th. And this happens a lot in poor families. So we have to introduce another segmentation here, which should be based by income type. Now you can assume any income buckets as long as it makes sense and your interviewer also agrees with this. In this case, I have assumed 3 income buckets, which are middle and upper, lower middle, and below poverty line households. I have assumed 50% of students are in middle and upper class, 30% in lower middle, and 20% in BPL households. These percentages reflect the affordability of each of the income segments for the school types. So I have assumed that for middle and upper income children, they can 100% of them can afford to go to all the schools. But for BPL children, going to 11th and 12th standard is not an option usually. So once you have calculated all the figures, once you have laid down the segments in detail and got the interviewer to agree with you, It's only a matter of multiplying the numbers and arrive at a final answer. So in this case, we'll multiply these percentages by the population of each of the school types, and we arrive at a final figure of around 46 lakhs. Now your answer might be quite different. It can be 65 lakhs or it can be 36 lakhs. The actual answer doesn't matter at all because the interviewer is not looking for the right answer, as there is none. There is only a right approach to guesstimates. So let's have a detailed look at what the interviewer is looking for while you are solving a guesstimate. So an interviewer is definitely looking for your structured thought process, and more importantly, how you are able to communicate your thought process to the interviewer. At every step of the guesstimate, you have to keep the interviewer's interest. You should explain every little assumptions that you are making, and you should get him to agree with you. Otherwise, he'll lose interest and you will not clear the round. Last point, the interviewer is keenly observing your behavior under stress. Because there is time constraint, there are usually 4 to 5 minutes, and he is looking for your assumptions, your calculations, your communication, and all the software attributes. So you have to keep special attention to your behavior. Next, we look at how you as a candidate should approach guesstimates. So I have already explained it using the example, but let's have a look at it again. So you have to clarify the objective in sufficient detail, which many candidates did a great job of asking the right questions. Then you clarify all the assumptions you make. So for example, if I am assuming that the population of Delhi is 2 crores, I'll ask the interviewer, so I'm assuming the population of Delhi to be around 2 crores. Is it a fair number? So this way you keep the interviewer engaged. Second point is, before you hit your pen on paper, take some time, stop, make a mental structure of how you're going to proceed. So in this case, I instantly knew that I'd do an age-based segmentation and then an income segmentation. Now, if you're just starting with guesstimates, you have never solved one before, it's quite difficult to immediately know what kind of segmentation you should do. But once you have practiced enough guesstimates, you will know what segmentation is needed in a particular type of problem. The third step is, once you have formed a mental structure, then break down the problem into smaller components. This is because if you are writing a bunch of equations at once, instead of breaking it down into smaller parts, the interviewer might not be follow along, and you will lose his interest. Fourth point, you have to remain calm throughout the solution, because as I explained earlier, the interviewer is looking for how you are behaving. So now that we have had a look at how a portion of your hiring process might look like, let's have a look at the placement process in detail.
Hi guys, so I'm back, and this is a typical placement process as we have experienced in most of our engineering colleges as well as in IIMs. This is a multi-step process for most of you, and since most of you are going to be attending placements for the first time, we're going to tell you how it generally works in most colleges. So before everything else, there is usually a document called CV or a curriculum vitae or a resume that you prepare. This document is usually 1 page long and reflects all that you have done so far. And then basis your CV and whether it matches the company's profiles or not, you are shortlisted for the next round. The next round is usually a technical assessment. A technical assessment can take the form of a coding test, an aptitude test, or a subject matter test, like in the case of mechanical engineering or other core companies. So if you qualify for the technical interview or the technical assessment, you then attend group discussions and a technical and HR interview. Now, group discussions and technical and HR interviews are interactions that you have either in a group setting or in a one-on-one setting in GDs and PIs respectively. What we have observed over the last few years is that a lot of engineering students have this perception that placements is a random process and most of us get placed randomly basis our luck. This is absolutely not true. What happens is that a small part of it, which is basis what you can write in your CV, is probably out of your control right now because that has occurred over the last 3 years or even before that. But everything else can be prepared for, including your technical assessment, which can be aced with the help of practice, your group discussions, your technical interviews, as well as your HR interviews. The difference between the technical and HR interviews has been diminishing continuously, and a lot of common criteria are emerging between both of this. And what we aim to do is to help you get through the entire process from end to end through this webinar, as well as a lot of our other offerings. So going ahead, we'll explain to you the different kinds of parts of the placement process. The first part is your CV. So your CV is the document that reflects you when you are not there in front of the interviewer or the recruiter. And it is usually a one-page document, like I already said. So you have very limited space, and hence your point should be extremely crisp, so that they do not take a lot of amount of space in your CV. It is also extremely important to emphasize on numbers so that your recruiter knows what is happening with you or what you have achieved by looking at your resume. We know that recruiters look at resumes for an average time of only 2 minutes. What this implies for you is that he will not be able to look at it completely, and he's going to be looking at the starts of your points, and hence the starts of these points must be very emphatic and effective in nature. So for instance, you should use a lot of action verbs such as spearheaded, contributed, achieved, led, or participated, etc., which are going to be showing the interviewer that you have done some kind of activity. And then you should also order your points according to impact and according to the needs of the interviewer. So in this, for example, if I am applying for an analytics firm, I would put an analytics internship or a maths Olympiad that I've done, which shows my analytics skills at the top as compared to my other achievements. Similarly, in a mechanical engineering firm that I'm applying to, I would probably put an SAE Baha or a motorsports achievement that I have done above everything else. So this catches the eye of the recruiter and enables him to look through my CV better. And hence this is also customized from recruiter to recruiter. Also, last but not the least is the fact that your CV has to be extremely well formatted and well designed, because like I said, recruiters take very less time per resume, and if it is shabby, it is highly possible that they won't even look at your resume before making a decision whether to hire you or not. So how do you make a great CV? So the first step of a great CV is First step of a great CV is to reflect on all the achievements that you had till date and collate them into one huge CV called a master CV. And after this, you have to choose your points according to the different kinds of firms that you are going to apply for and make them into different variants. And post this, this is highly recommended that you get it reviewed by professionals like us or people who have experience in the placement process, so that they can tell you what is great about your CV and what is not. And then you can go back to the drawing board and redesign your CV multiple times until you attain a level of perfection in your CV that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of the anatomy of a CV point, I'm going to give you two different examples of points that I have written in my own CV. So in my undergraduate, I had taken part in a college technical fest, and I wrote this point, and I thought it was pretty great at that particular point in time. I said I was a part of the college technical fest team, and I displayed teamwork and leadership abilities in participating and coordinating various aspects of the festival. However, I realized that a recruiter probably never read this point, and this point would have seemed completely worthless to him, while it seemed great to me. Now let me show you a perfectly made CV point, so to understand the difference between what I've written then and what I've learned later. Yeah, so I have divided the CV point into two parts, and the first part says I've spearheaded a team of 120 plus organizers to organize largest college festival in 5 years and achieved 25,000 plus footfall and coordinated 50 plus events across 7 verticals. So what is so different about what I've written here and what I've written above? It starts with an action verb. Like I said, it says spearheaded or achieved. It catches the eye of the interviewer. It is immediately followed by a number, which is either 25,000 plus footfall or a team of 120 plus organizers. What this means is that the recruiter knows that I have experience handling large teams and I've also experience in great marketing or handling large crowds. The next point is this is also ordered according to impact. So if you look at it, the first point shows leadership experience and also a great achievement, which is the largest college festival in the last 5 years. The second point is slightly more administrative and hence of lesser impact. Last but not the least is that this point is both these points are formatted very effectively so that the bolded parts of these sentences draw the attention of the recruiter to multiple very important parts of these points. So this is how you make a great CV point. We can help you make these great CV points in the rest of our CV webinars. Rudra will take over to explain you how do you behave in GDs and PIs.
Hello. Hi. So let's start with GD. First of all, understand that a GD is a group discussion where you need to interact with the entire group. So what happens is many of us turn into a two-way communication or worse one-way or even an argument, which is entirely not the purpose of a GD. So a typical GD usually starts with the moderator shooting the topic at you, giving you around 3 minutes to think and maybe 10 minutes to discuss. So the first 3 minutes are very crucial because during these 3 minutes, you need to plan what you will be doing for the next 10 minutes. So it is always advisable that you carry a pen, paper and a wristwatch to the GD. During those 3 minutes, you should note down all the points in your mind and make a structure as to how you want to put those across panel. So starting the GD gets you brownie points. However, it doesn't ensure a selection. So if you're starting the GD, you need to be careful of giving the entire discussion a structure because most of the times what happens is people just put a point across and then leave it for the group to proceed. But that's not what is expected from the person who is starting the GD. Again, it's a very common perception that the first 3 people to enter the GD have a better chance. However, you could enter at 4th, you could enter at 5th, and you could still be selected if your contribution is valuable enough. So how do you make your contribution valuable? First of all, your points need to be very relevant to the topic and those also need to be well articulated and not repetitive. So at a point, if you feel like, say you didn't get the chance to speak earlier and all your points are taken, so what do you do? So in these cases, what happens is you might still like to contribute by, you might like to support someone's point with an example or maybe counter someone's. So again, countering is a very risky take. So you have to be very, very careful that you are not cutting anyone. And while this could be a competitive GD for you, but you behaving rudely is totally not in your favor. So what it does, it gives the moderator a picture of how you would behave during your company meeting, say. So in order to have more and better points to actually speak during the GD, practice is the key. So GD topics are typically from politics, general discussions, but these are not limited. GD topics could be very abstract also, like say red is the new black. And recently, some companies have started giving group exercises of solving a puzzle through GDs. So don't worry, we'll be practicing all of these in our GD sessions. Again, it's very important that during the GD, you should not just speak, but listen to. So at times we have the urge that whenever we get the opportunity to enter a GD, we put our point. So what happens is that maybe the group discussion is going on in an entirely different direction. Although your point could be relevant to the broad topic, however, it is deviating from the direction where the group is going. So in such cases, since you got the opportunity to speak, so you should ideally try to bring the group in your direction of thought first and then speak your point. Otherwise, it looks very abrupt. And when you listen, you should ideally also make some notes so that, when the GD timing is about to end, you know it because you are wearing a wristwatch. And so that time you may like to conclude it. So even though you might feel that your initial contribution was not very much up to mark, but a good conclusion still adds to your visibility. Okay. So yeah, that's all for GD. So moving ahead. So yeah, after you clear the GD, the next step is PI. PI is around a 20 minutes exercise where you as a person are being judged. Therefore, you should try putting the best of yourself and show the interviewer how you are aligned with the company and the particular role. In order to do this, you should be well versed with the business of the company. This includes their products, where they come in the value chain, and the competitive scenario. And to understand the role, you should ideally read the job description, which is a very important document and is ideally shared by the Placecom before you apply to the role. So reading the job description, you should try to fit yourself with the role. So how do you fit yourself? So the first step being you need to know yourself. Maybe so a good way of knowing yourself is stories. So stories about things that happened in your life. So these stories, these are useful not just in making your CV, but also help you ace most of the non-technical questions during your interview. For example, say you didn't perform well in your first attempt to your JEE exams. Then you considered giving it a next try to join an institute of your choice. So this particular example shows that you are determined enough to work again to achieve your goal. So when a recruiter asks you your strength, you might say him that you are a determined individual who will persistently try to achieve the desired result. And if the recruiter tries to know more like why do you think that you are determined, you might quote this as an example. The most common question during any interview is to introduce yourself. So during introduce yourself, you should first of all understand that the recruiter is holding your CV and they already know your qualification. But they still need your introduction. So your introduction should not be very heavy in terms of education. Say for example, a typical grad student would introduce like, "Hi, I am Rudra Nayak. I'm doing my BTech in electrical engineering from NIT Rourkela. I have done my 10th and 12th from DAV Public School," and so on. So what happens is that, guys, here the 10th and 12th you speak about, this is not a unique point to you. And there are 10 other people waiting in line for their interview. They also have done their 10th and 12th from some other place. And moreover, this is also mentioned in your CV. So a better way of introducing could be, "Hi, I'm Rudra Naik, pursuing electrical engineering. Apart from my academic program, I'm handling two major responsibilities at the institute, one being convener of the upcoming cultural festival and the other being captain of the Formula Racing team. I interned with Tata Motors, which further developed my interest in automobiles. Apart from these, my passions also include traveling. I have covered 20 by 28 states and 5 by 8 union territories, and I manage a blog of my own." So this particular introduction gives the recruiter many things which are unique to you, including your passions, your interest in a particular field, and your PORs. So it is very unlikely that any of the 10 people who are in line after you will have the similar set of attributes to add to their profile. So this gives a different picture rather than you just saying about your 10th and 12th. Yeah, as you can see, interviews are twofold, technical and HR interview, and day by day the gap between them is decreasing, as we already said. So the reason being that once you join a company, you will be working on your core knowledge for maximum say 2 to 3 years, post which your work will be largely managerial. So you will need to have like really good people skills to work with the local task force or to understand your company's perception within the local community. So during the interview, the recruiter looks at these things too. For example, we conducted a guesstimate session. Now, guesstimate is not a part of your curriculum, yet very important. Say you're working in a steel company and are handling the wire roll steels, which is the saria we call it, and is an important material in construction. Now, a guesstimate of the number of upcoming construction projects in the next year could help you plan your production levels this year. So a good answer to why you want to join a company tells that you know their business. And a good guesstimate gives the recruiter an idea that you can be a part of their business too. And again, when you talk about passions, perseverance, the recruiter becomes more sure of your fit with the company. Another important thing is structuring your answers. So we typically use the STAR framework, as to STAR is a situation, task, action, repeat. For example, as I talked about the JEE example, so yeah, the situation was that your JEE score at a particular for a particular year was not good. So the task you took was making a choice whether to go to the institute you were getting admission to, or to wait for another year and to really try for the institute you want to join. So the task you did was making this particular choice. And the action that followed was that when you give yourself a second chance, how you work for your goal, how you do not, how you work harder than the previous year and come out as a better version of yourself in the next try to the same exam. And the response being that, yeah, you are at this particular institute. So this kind of structuring ideas also gives the recruiter an idea that you are a very logical person. Say, for example, in my introduction also, I spoke about my academics, then what else I am doing at the institute. So institute was the link. Then about automobiles, say from Formula Racing Team to Tata Motors, then automobiles was the link. Then passions was the link, say from automobiles to traveling. So every time that I took a link and then I moved forward, not just making, blank statements. So yeah, this is how you should go about it.
Hope you guys have had a fair bit of idea regarding of a typical campus hiring process. So let's have a look at the major problems that students typically face. On the left hand side, you can see some of these problems arise because of lack of familiarity of students with the content that is required for the interview. So guys, please turn off your video cameras. So for example, some students aren't even familiar with guesstimates or common technical questions, or some companies which ask for case studies during the interview. Some students might not have ever practiced for these. So aside from the 7th point, all of the previous 6 points are about the softer attributes of your behavior, which can be rectified with proper practice. So these are somehow related to your communication, speaking ability, your nervousness, your behavior during the interview. So sometimes what happens is you know the answer and still you are not able to recount it during the interview. So the only sustainable solution to these problems that we think is a 3-step process. The first is you have to learn the fundamentals. By fundamentals, I mean that you learn the basics of behaving in an interview. You learn the etiquettes. You learn how to answer basic questions such as introduce yourself. You learn how you would react when you are thrown a question that you have never even heard of. So once you have had a fair bit of idea regarding how to proceed in an interview, what is required, the next step would be to practice with experts in a professional setup. This step is extremely critical. Once you have selected a professional, you stick to him or her for at least 4 to 5 sessions. The third step would be to incorporate whatever feedback you receive into your actions. Once you have done all of this, there is no stopping you from getting your desired job in your campus placements.
So where EduRig comes in is to bridge the distance between you and your dream company and chart the entire process or journey that you have between both of them. We'll help you across every stage. We partner with you starting from making your CV to reviewing it multiple times and co-creating it with you, to giving you information and preparation material regarding aptitude as well as technical tests, and also help you prepare with GDs along with live sessions moderated by students or alumni from IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Calcutta. We also have personal interviews in which we have personal interviews preparation, in which we do personal interviews with you, and also we have an advanced preparation in which we give you feedback and also develop your personality as a whole to be able to be recruited in your dream company. So these are the testimonials of some of the students who have worked with us in the past. Two of them are CAT 100 percentilers. Some of more of them are have done well in CAT and are also in great firms, absolutely brilliant firms. And we have helped them through cracking CAT, through converting their interviews, as well as to help them convert all of their internship interviews as well. So in terms of offerings, we have three major offerings. One is the interviews basic course, which has 2 mock interviews as well as 5 webinars regarding all the aspects. Whatever we covered today, we'll cover in more detail. We also have an interviews advanced package in which we give you 10 mock PIs with a lot of feedback. We personally mentor you and co-create your resume with you, and also give you consistent feedback like Nitesh said. And also there is group discussions. For those who feel underconfident in group settings, they can have the same with us. You can avail all the benefits as well through the consummate professional package. We also provide single interview facilities as well as single CV review facilities as well as single GDs. And for us, if you want to get in touch with us regarding these packages or regarding anything else in general, you can mail us at info@edurec.in or WhatsApp us on the given number. So we are now open for questions. A lot of you have been asking questions on chat that I've been answering. So you can ask us more questions on chat, we'll answer. You can also look at the chat for previous questions that have been asked. I think they're very valid questions.
Ankita has asked a question. Can we describe a city or culture in a city and things like that when telling about ourselves? You can surely mention that you are from this place. Maybe a couple of lines regarding that you have grown up in this environment. But beyond that, it will be unnecessary. So whatever you tell the interviewer regarding your past background, you have to be quite crisp about it. You should take care that you do not come across as rambling during the introduction.
Also, if you feel that you can really talk about your city for long, you can really put emphasis on it. But like Nitesh said, it is not directly related to you and hence is a risky question. Also, there's been another question that he has been suggested once to describe about family. See, almost everybody does that. It is an amateurish way of describing yourself. However, if there is a challenge or something that you have learned that you think is very important for you from your family, it is good to include it. However, this varies from person to person. We can give you such tips on any one of our courses. And also Atishay has asked that case studies and guesstimates, are they only part of consulting interviews or are more companies generally accepting it? Well, yes, traditionally they have been part of consulting interviews, especially case studies, but guesstimates now are being asked by almost all analytics firms as well as finance firms and even some engineering firms.
Someone has also asked regarding the impact of recession on opportunities in consulting firms. So we already discussed it during one of our earlier slides. The impact is still ongoing, and this is something that we'll be able to fully comprehend in another 4 to 5 months.
There was a question regarding whether the introduction should include something which is not there in the CV or not. And I would recommend that yes, it should definitely include something which is not there in your CV. And through my personal experience, it has been that sometimes the recruiter has asked, say, tell me something which is not in your CV right from the beginning, so that people do not include other things in their introduction. So see, the way I did my introduction, the traveling part, that time it was not there in my CV. However, I understand that some of you might have this in your CV based on your achievements in that particular passion. So the key to this is basically when you start making your CV, as Ganesh told, so it's the two-step process ideally. First of all, you collate all your achievements, all what you want to say in your master CV, and then you make your one-pager. So when you go on making your one pager, you will realize that there are some points which you need to keep aside, and because of the space constraints within the one pager CV that you will be finally producing to the recruiter. And apart from these, there are many things that you did in your life which actually cannot be written in your CV. So your introduction could include points that could not be written, or the points that could not fit into the one pager, or there are other things, say about your personality, about your likes and dislikes, say maybe your beliefs in a particular about particular thing about life in general, or maybe about academics too, that say I am somebody who doesn't like who is not confined only to the theoretical knowledge, but I like to explore the practicalities of what I understand too. And then you give an example that I'm active in so and so clubs and doing this. So yeah, this could be, I hope this satisfies the answer.
One more thing is, so somebody's asked me, is in some of the interviews, they're asking one question that, are you willing to relocate to any part of India? That is usually a measure of your flexibility, and also it is personally to understand whether you'd be able to work in different geographies without any problem or not. The answer to that is typically yes, unless and until you have some personal problem. And also adding one more point to what Rudra said, your introduce yourself can concentrate on 3 topics which you really want to talk about. You can expand on them, and so that the interviewer can direct his entire interview to these 3 topics.
Someone has also asked regarding 3 to 4 good GD topics. The thing is, GD topics are usually centered around current affairs. Right now, Corona, COVID-19 is a pretty hot topic. Recession is also another hot topic. Other than this, there are some evergreen topics. For example, feminism, women in corporate. Then there are abstract topics. The interviewer will just tell you one word, black, and you have to form your thoughts around it and then have a group discussion. It can be a topic like orange is the new black. So it can be pretty much anything, but you have to be well versed with current affairs at least.
And the group exercise, which is another example of GD that I was talking about. So how it goes like is, say there are 6 people in a GD and all of them are given some clue cards. So there is some information written, and the question is, say you have to find out the height of this building. And on the cards it is written hints like the building is cuboidal in shape, the building has 10 bricks, each brick has this much height, or something. So which you will need to discuss with the group and to reach to an answer. So these kind of topics, these kind of GD formats are also increasingly becoming popular.
Guys, if you have any other queries, feel free to just email us. Even if you're not particularly interested in a course, we will be very glad to help you out.
Yeah, so last 2 questions that I can see here. One is, one is, if you don't know the question asked by the interviewer, do we need to say directly that we don't know the answer or guess something and reply? Well, that depends from question to question. If you can make a logical response, yes. Otherwise, it is okay to accept that you don't know it. But we have a set of ways in how to make logical responses in questions that you don't know that we'll be covering in our package. You can enroll for it to know more. And then should we prepare a cover letter or not? That really depends on the requirements of the interviewer or firm in place. It is all, if the firm accepts a cover letter, by all means you can. Otherwise, it depends.
So this is something that even the Placecom will tell you. So typically when companies require a cover letter, they explicitly mention it in their JD.
And also, how to respond to feedback from interviewers after GD or interview. You can politely thank them and tell them that you'll incorporate this into your entire preparation as well. So I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any more queries, don't feel free to engage us on our email ID or on our WhatsApp. Also, we hope that a lot of you register with us for our courses, because they're going to be a lot more information than what has been given today. And we hope that it will be great. Thank you very much.